Hello, my lovely Natsuki's. It's your bestie Summer, and that I have been waiting to say that for a while. It has been a while since I have said that. Uh, I really needed the break, but I'm back. You finally don't have to anticipate me not posting for the rest of my life. I know, I was responding to comments and everything, but, how could I leave you guys without any response? I really needed that break, and today, yesterday was the last day of my school. I don't have any more school, and I am so happy about that. It was so stressful, it was so tiring, it was so, it was just driving me crazy. But I finally don't have it! Woo! And my life is just so much better for that. No, but I was, just really down in the dumps and stuff, and wasn't having the best time. But I started to get better, making videos started to be a bit of a chore for a little bit. I was constantly ugh, I need to do this before, my due date. Yes, I started thinking of, the post day as a due date. So I needed a little bit of a break. I needed to recuperate. I needed some milk, Mom. I needed energy. Sorry. I'm just really happy to be back. I really missed this. As you can tell by me responding to pretty much every single comment that I got, because I love you guys. I love you guys so much. I swear YouTube Studio has become my new TikTok. But anyway, so without further ado, it has been way too long. So without any more delay than there has already been, let's start. This is It's a Reflex, a DPXDC podfic written by Coffee Loving Hermit and read by Summer Audio. Enjoy! Beginning notes. Thank you all so much for reading this. All of your kudos and comments mean a lot to me, and they've helped me more than you might ever believe. I've had an insanely stressful past 5 years, and this is the most relaxed I've been in a while, in well over a decade, lol. And going to this journey with you all has been truly wonderful. I definitely forgot how much effort it takes in writing a fic, though. I had no idea what I was doing for basically all of it, lol. I knew the direction I wanted to go, but took the scenic route, which I don't regret, but wow are my writing brain cells aching. There are a few reasons why this took so long for me to get this out, but the main one is that my depression KO'd me big time for pretty much the whole month. Normally, I'm able to keep an iron grip on it, but things happen and 2 friendships have been reduced to ashes due to their actions against the whole friend group. Not to mention that last month marked the second death this year. On a happier note, I've been prepping for a roller coaster of a fic, not related to this one, smiley face. On my Tumblr, I'll be releasing a poll, link in my bottom notes, about how I'll be carrying out the rest of this series, because this is apparently going to be a series now. The next fic in the series is going to be a one-shot that'll lead to another series of one-shots, so I won't clog up this one. It'll be a while before I release the chunkier fics, though. I want to be on top of everything this time. Can you believe that this is the first thing in over a decade I've written that isn't an essay? Because it is, and you can tell by the change in writing proficiency throughout this fic, which is why it probably felt stilted at first. It's like roller skating as a kid, then using ice skates as an adult. I honestly might just retouch the first 2 chapters, but I'm also sentimental, so I also might not. What do you guys think? I'd like to thank you once again. This has been a lovely time with you all, and I don't get to pull any punches from here on out. Get ready! See end notes of chapter for more notes. Tim first ran forwards to hover around Danny, but stared at Tim in shock and horror. Why didn't you say anything about this? Oh my god, I'm so sorry, Danny. I should have realized that you weren't adopted by Bruce sooner. Danny, meanwhile, kept forcing himself to manually breathe like a normal living person would, because he is a normal living person. There's a sharp gasp from Duke. Holy shit on crackers, I'm complacent in a kidnapping. We all are. Fuck. Looking behind him, Danny saw that Duke had grabbed his head and was beginning to hyperventilate. First made a move to comfort Duke, but stayed near Danny until he motioned at first to take care of Duke. The man practically teleported over to his friend's side and wrapped him in a hug and started trying to calm him down. A few moments of himself was all that Danny needed to get back on track. Oh, geez Louise, I can't believe that I got myself into this mess. I hate my Fenton luck so much. Taking a deep breath, he looked at Tim, who was leaning on the counter with a satisfied look on his face. When they made eye contact, Tim winked at Danny before pulling out his phone and started rapidly typing on it. But first things first, I need to make sure that those two aren't going to work themselves into a tizzy. Okay, guys, it's alright. Really, this is more of a fun, spontaneous vacate. Duke's head shot up, and he almost headbutted first in the nose as the man quickly yanked his head back and kept hugging Duke. It's not all right. Why aren't you taking this more seriously? This is something that's really serious, and we need to get in contact with the authorities to let them know you're safe. Dick, we gotta call someone. First, quickly let go of Duke and frantically pulled out his phone. Bruce? Duke shouted as he looked up at first. Confusion swarmed Danny's head as he realized that maybe Dick actually is First's name. Wait, your name is Duke, and Dick were so busy being stuck in their little bubble to hear his question when Dick accidentally cut him off. Way ahead of you, Dookie Bear. I'm calling the commish right now if you want to get Bruce. Dick had already dialed this commish and was waiting for them to pick up while Duke was yelling, well, if they're not going to answer me, I'll just keep calling him first. At least they're not freaking the fuck out, so I'm so not qualified to deal with panic attacks. Duke started scrambling for his own phone, and Danny felt even more exacerbated by their antics. He watched them for a few moments before trying to talk to them again. If you guys would... Apparently, whoever first was calling hadn't picked up on the first try, so the man quickly redialed and cut him off. You're gonna be fine, Danny. We'll figure this out. Is there anyone you want us to call? Danny blinked at first, who was more worried for Danny than he was himself. Actually, now that I think about it, I really should let my friends and Mr. Lancer know that I'm alright. Duke was waiting for whoever Bruce is to answer as he stood up to pace around the kitchen, looking worried and biting his fingernails. Clearing his throat, Danny answered first. Yeah, can you call my teacher, Mr. Lancer? He's my class's chaperone, and while he knows the protocol, I'm sure that he'd appreciate someone letting him know that everyone and everything around me is safe and unharmed. First nodded with a firm, if slightly confused expression, and since the person he was calling didn't pick up again, the man shoved his phone into Danny's face. Danny grabbed the phone and started inputting Mr. Lancer's phone number when Duke suddenly ran towards the kitchen door and nervously said, Bruce, hey, so, there's a bit of a situation at the manor. His friend, kidnapper, shut the door behind him, and Danny honestly didn't care enough to focus his hearing to listen in on the call. Mr. Lansard's number taunted him, and the call button made his anxiety come back full force. Hitting the call button, Danny shoved the phone back into Dick's hands that were laying in the man's lap. Once the action caught up to Danny, he stared at the suddenness of first sitting right next to him. When did he sit down next to me? Man, I need to work on keeping track of my environment if I missed that so easily. First gave him such a soft and warm look that made Danny want to ask if he could get a hug like the one Duke got. Why would I want a hug from him? He's just a random guy who kidnapped me. He ignored the little voice in the back of his head, whispering that First had shown him more care and affection in a few hours than his parents do in a week. The man brought the phone up to his ear, then leaned forward to squeeze Danny's shoulder, as if he could hear Danny's thoughts. His smile somehow grew softer as Danny leaned into his hand. Mr. Lancer must have picked up because First straightened, and it was like he became a totally different person. Confident, focused, and professional with such a stark change from the floundering, warm, and nonchalant man Danny was familiar with, that he couldn't help but wonder if First was faking everything the whole day. Hello, is this Mr. Lansard? I'm Richard Grayson Wayne, but you can call me Dick. Yes, this is the son of Bruce Wayne. There was a beat, then First spoke again. Yes, this is about Danny. He's perfectly all right and has been an angel the entire time I have been with him. Huh, looks like that actually is his name. No way am I going to be saying that with a straight face, though. He's forever going to be known as First. First patted Danny on the shoulder one final time before quickly standing up and walking over to one of the drawers next to one of the sinks to dig through it. There has been a huge misunderstanding between my brothers and I regarding Danny. My family and I were at WE earlier today. Since the man seemed busy taking care of his mistakes, Danny didn't want to listen to the conversation out of shame and embarrassment from getting into the situation in the first place. I really should pay attention, though. Something like this isn't able to be hidden away and forgotten about. A throat clearing from behind him brought Danny out of his spiraling as Tim was holding out a hand, looking bored. He just sat there staring at Tim in bewilderment. The other teen rolled his eyes and grabbed Danny's hand, then pulled him up to his feet and started dragging him to the kitchen door. Follow me. You and I should talk more about that offer I gave you earlier, and I would like to do that before the manor gets swarmed by more idiots. Danny nodded, even though Tim wasn't facing him. Once they had reached the door, though, First called out to them, just as Tim grabbed the doorknob. Timothy Jackson Drake Wayne, where are you taking Danny? Said teen groaned, and his shoulders rose to his ears, but didn't drop his hand from the doorknob. Danny looked back and saw that First was hunched over a notepad and holding a pen. No, nothing to worry about, Mr. Lancer. My youngest brother, Tim, just started taking Danny out of the kitchen, and I wanted to know where they were going, as Wayne Manor is very easily to get lost in. Wayne? That name is definitely ringing some type of alarm bells. Not to mention that their names sound pretty familiar for some reason. I feel like it's a Sam thing that she ranted about before we went on the school trip. Oh well, that's a problem for future me to figure out. Tim looked over his shoulder and to glare beautifully at First, then yelled out enough for Mr. Lancer to hear over the phone. I'm taking Danny to the living room, the weird cat painting one. First gave Tim an unimpressed glare, which made the teen seethe and then talk at a normal volume. There's some more questions that I want Danny to answer. Nothing harmful, I promise. Tim did something weird with his hands after he spoke. Are they passing notes with gang signs or something? Danny saw first slide his suffocating stare over to him, then first forced himself to relax, nodded at him, then started talking to Mr. Lancert again. The two walked out of the kitchen and started to walk to the big hall, things where all of the hallways were at. Why is everyone in this family so suspicious when I take Danny somewhere in the manor? Tim grumbled to himself, but Danny was able to catch it. Probably because you actively hid the fact that this is a kidnapping. They reached the big hall thing. He really needed to find out what this was called. And went into the hallway directly across from this one. Danny was as confused as he was the last time. Tim dragged him through the manor. Why does everything look the same? They really should put signs up. How do they not get lost in this maze? First wasn't lying. It really would be easy to get lost in here. Stopping in front of a door that looked like the same as all of the others, Tim opened it to reveal a living room that looked like it belonged in a palace, and on the wall facing the doorway was one of those medieval cat paintings. Something was bugging Danny, though. Just who were these people that had apparently kidnapped him? Why are they in a place like this to begin with? First was talking about a bedroom earlier. Do they live here? Is this place an overly fancy but renovated workplace? They could be providing boarding, but for some reason it doesn't feel like that's right. Wait, don't Tim and the manor have the same name? The teen that Danny was thinking about was walking in front of him and entered the room, waving at Danny to sit on the couch facing the big screen TV as Tim went over to an armchair. In a single, graceful yet controlled movement, Tim lounged in the armchair, then crossed his legs. Following that, Tim laid his cheek on his fist and quietly stared at Danny, patiently waiting for him to sit. Danny froze under the suffocating gaze. That felt like Tim can sort through his thoughts with a fine-toothed comb. Wow, okay, is he even human? That was so smooth, it's honestly intimidating. What the actual fuck? What if instead of a meta-trafficking ring, this is like a meta-mafia or something? They're totally giving off mafia vibes with the suits, manor, and cars. Oh, my ancients, this is totally a mafia thing, isn't it? I am too young and dead to be in a mafia. Glancing panikedly at Tim made the other team frown while Danny cursed at himself to give away his fear so easily. Tilting his head, Tim hummed to himself, then sat in a less intimidating pose, but still kept him pinned under the seemingly all-knowing gaze. After a beat, Danny shook himself from his stupor and went to sit down on the couch. Not looking at the other teen, he played with his hands in silence and waited to hear whatever important thing Tim wanted to say in private. They sat in silence for a few minutes before Tim spoke. There won't be much time left until the others barge in, so I'll be keeping this short. Are you in danger and need immediate help? Danny looked up at Tim, disbelieving, then slowly shook his head. Do you want me to get in contact with Nightwing for you as soon as possible? He honestly didn't know. It would be nice to get help with the Fruit Loop, but I don't want to risk it. Nightwing getting hurt trying to help me. Maybe I could give him some ghost fighting equipment? A polite cough brought him out of his thoughts. Oh, sorry, I was just thinking of if I should say yes or no. It would be nice to get some help, but I also don't want to risk Nightwing getting hurt or something worse happening. Tim slowly nodded, with his eyes trained on the entrance to the room while tapping his finger on the armrest. The teen spoke while intensely staring as if he was making contact with someone. You don't have to worry about Nightwing. He knows how to take care of himself, and he has been thoroughly trained to go into unknown situations blind by a lot of mentors. Danny turned his head to see if there was someone there, but there was no one. If you're still worried about Nightwing getting hurt, do you want another vigilante on the case? Danny gnawed at his lip and thought, that actually would be better. The buddy system always helped out. Sam, Tuck, and I. Wait, do the birds work with metamafias? I don't think they do, but you never know with unknown people, if they're even people to begin with. Who are these people that the bats and birds would work with them enough that Tim has just a way to talk to them? Tim apparently interpreted his thinking about metamafias as Danny hesitated about the risk to Nightwing and whoever else would be helping the heroes. There's nothing that you need to worry about. Nightwing and the other vigilantes I have in mind can work remotely while staying under the radar of even Batman himself. Blinking at Tim, he decided to put trust in his new friend, however shady he is, and jumped off of the cliff. Yes, it would. Danny's shoulders rose, and he stared at the armrest that he was picking at. It would be nice if 2 heroes could help me, but I'd definitely prefer that they do it remotely. Who's the other one you were thinking of? Danny flit his eyes up to stare nervously at Tim, who was now leaning forward wearing a strained expression, with his elbows on his knees and hands clasped together. Red Robin. He has the same level of experience with solving cases remotely as Nightwing does, and is also known to keep things under wraps. Moving on to the next question, is there a billionaire who is harassing you, Mr. Mess? He shot forward and ended up kneeling on the coffee table to cover Tim's mouth with his hand. The other teen was looking at him with wide eyes, but didn't move from his position. They both looked at each other, then Danny scrambled off of the coffee table and sat back on the couch. Clearing his throat, Danny spoke. Yeah, sorry about that. It's just a habit I have since he usually pops up after saying his name. Like Beetlejuice. Tim kept his face blank as he slowly nodded. But, yeah, that's him. He curled in around himself and continued talking. Would they really be able to help? The Fruit Loop has a lot of people in a lot of places, and if they get on his radar, then he won't be kind to them. He'll track down everyone and everything related to them and destroy their lives in the worst way possible, because he doesn't take no as an answer. He sees me as his, and he won't take anyone trying to stop him from getting to me very well. Silence hung over their heads like a guillotine at his words. Danny, can you look at me? He took in a shuddering breath and made eye contact with Tim, who looked ready to skin the Fruit Loop alive. Nightwing and Red Robin risk their lives every time they put on their uniforms, and they know it all too well. They go out every night anyways because they want to help people. Danny's vision began to blur, and he struggled to keep his breathing even. People like you, Danny, who need someone to stand up for them. The bats have multiple safety measures in place. It won't be easy to get the drop on them. If you really think that there's more stuff to be worried about, then you can bring it up to the 2 of them. When you meet them, alright? I promise you that they'll take your concerns for them seriously and make more safety measures to your liking. Tim gave Danny a sharp and bloodthirsty smile. The bats and birds are considered the strongest in the Justice League, for a reason. They don't take any chances of death or injury and will hunt down criminals to bring them to justice no matter what. On this world, or galaxies away, once a villain is in their sights, they'll drag the criminals to justice, beat and bloodied. The rush of emotions ran through him as Danny let his tears fall. For so long, I feared angering Vlad. I don't know if this is too good to be true, but by the ancient but by the ancients do I want this to be real. He covered his mouth just as he let out a sob. That Fruit Loop keeps making crazier and crazier plots. I barely got through the last one. Every time Jazz apologizes to me for what happened, it makes it harder for me to not just go up to Vlad and punch him in the stupid face. A hand landed on his shoulder, and Tim's face appeared as he crouched next to Danny. His friend started to mutter reassurances to Danny, and his calming voice brought a sense of finalization to him. This is really happening. I'm actually going to get help. I won't have to do it by myself and put my friends at risk. Maybe I can ask them for heroing tips? No, don't be ridiculous, Fenton. You're gonna be wasting their time enough as it is. Taking one more steadying breath, Danny wiped away the rest of his tears and cleared his throat before speaking. I'm good. Sorry about that. Can you tell them that I need to give them some gear before they start poking into the Fruit Loops business? They can test it if they want, but I'd rather be laughed at than something really bad happening to them. Tim kept a steady gaze, but gave a strained smile. The teen got up from his crouched position and walked back to the lounge on the chair. That can be easily arranged. I promise that Nightwing and Red Robin will take any concerns you have for them seriously, and I have it on good faith that the birds will always love getting new gear. Tim grinned brightly, and Danny couldn't help but feel like Tim's smile is the best out of all of them. The birds are supposed to be robins, but they honestly act more like magpies, given the amount of shiny stuff they keep stealing. Danny just politely smiled at the weird comment, because he honestly didn't know what the ever dead fuck Tim was talking about. Creaking came from the hallway, followed by Tim coughing into his fist to badly hide a smile. Right, anyways, back to the questionnaire. How many other people would be caught up in the blast? Danny scrunched his face in thought, but just as he was about to respond, the sound of knocking came from the living room entrance. They both turned to see First, who leaned against the doorframe and wearing a strained smile. What? When did he get there? I should have heard him walk up. Is being silent his meta power, or was the creaking from First? I would have thought that being as silent as the dead was Tim's power after that happening in the garage. Are these two just assassins for the big cheese or something? No way 2 people managed to get past my hearing in an hour without something shady going on, like assassins. Maybe they're undercover for the bats. That'd explain why Tim is so confident that he can get in contact with them. During this time, Danny was lost in his thoughts. First had walked up to the room proper and sat on the other side of the couch. So, should that be a question that I need to worry about? Fear shot through Danny, but Tim kept a level face. I can't involve more people than I already have. It's bad enough with Tim, and he doesn't even know the whole story. The Fruit Loop's gonna know something's up with all of these people looking into him. Not to mention that the birds don't have any ghost fighting equipment. Luckily, Tim took over for Danny and waved a hand through the air. No, it's not something that you have to worry about. Just making sure that Danny over here is taking this well and isn't freaking out. Tim leaned back fully into the chair. So, do you have any news on what's going to happen next? I'm sure that Mr. Lancer wasn't going to take this news all that well. First snorted and kicked his feet up onto the coffee table, then hung his arms on the back of the couch. Mr. Lancer was definitely not happy about it, but after I proved that we are actually the Waynes, he and I worked out a plan. First swung his head to face Danny and pointed at him. You, young man, are going to be spending the night here, and then Mr. Lancer will be picking you up at 9:30 in the morning." The man gave another bright smile, just enough time for a movie night and breakfast with the family. "Okay, that's good. Looks like I was just making up scenarios again. This is another point to Jazz, the psychopomp therapist, that with still 0 points for me. Then being mafia assassins and acting as spies for the Bats was a wild idea to begin with." Danny paused as the thought struck him. Should I prank Tim to get back at him? First must have seen something, because his smile turned sharp for a split second, then returned to his usual sunny smile. Clearing his face and putting on his disbelieving frown, Danny looked over at Tim. "This seems like a criminal thing to do. You're not gonna bag and gag me, are you?" Tim made an affronted sound, so Danny glared at him. "You clearly don't care about breaking the law, and you guys are giving off some serious mafia vibes here." Danny threw a hand out at their surroundings. "So please, forgive me for not wanting to risk getting trafficked or something." Tim gaped at him in bafflement, then started sputtering, while first threw his head back and started cackling. Danny himself was fighting for his afterlife to not give up the game so early. "Says the one who got in a car with a stranger." His not-a-mafia assassin friend frantically pointed at him. "Why would the Bats even work with the mafia in the first place when they take down crime families?" Tim looked at first for help, but the man was so busy laughing his head off and slowly slipping off the couch to help. Crossing his arms and raising an eyebrow, Danny bulldozed on. Pretty sure you guys are like mafia assassins that are acting as spies for the Bats or something. Duh, it's pretty obvious when you look at it close enough." Tim opened and closed his mouth with a wide-eyed look, then put his head in his hands. A high-pitched sound came from Tim that made first laugh even harder and completely fall onto the ground with a thud, red-faced. Danny couldn't help but join first in laughing at his friend. He really is gullible, isn't he? Tim stopped the tea kettle impression to throw a pillow at Danny. It hit him square in the face, so he dramatically fell on top of First, who huffed at the weight but wrapped Danny into a hug. Opening his eyes, he saw Tim, who probably teleported because Danny didn't hear him move at all, smirking as he stood at their feet. He tensed up and felt First looking downward, then also stiffening. The two scrambled to sit up, but Tim was faster. Danny felt the air rush out of him, while First groaned at the added weight. As Tim trapped them by ragdolling, despite it all 3 of them were laughing. Several minutes later, they finally stopped laughing and detangled from each other, then sat at their original spots. None of them said anything for a few moments, as they all reigned in the excitement of what just happened. Tim cleared his throat to get back to his professionalism from before. "Well, mafia accusations aside, I'll set up a meeting between the two parties. Do you have any preferences for the place and time?" Tim had to hide a smile when he started talking, but First had no reservations on laughing again. "It's the Cauldron's fault that you're here in the first place, so they can deal with their mess at your convenience." Tim kept an even tone as he glared at First. "Aren't you worried that Nightwing and Red Robin won't agree with that? Also, what do you mean it's their fault that I'm here? Why'd you call them Cauldron?" Danny gave Tim a dry look at the other teen's apparent need to be cryptic. "I already have to deal with one cryptic bastard. I don't need another." "Oh, don't worry." Tim gave a pointed look at First, who gave an airy laugh. "They're cool with it. I wouldn't have offered that if I didn't know that they would have kicked up a fuss." first looked away from Tim so he could look around the room, and whilst in response, the teen rolled his eyes, but kept going after, refocusing on Danny. My family gets targeted a lot, so anytime there's a large gathering of us there, at least one bat is waiting in the rafters. Seems like today, one or more of them didn't pick up the slack, so they owe you big time. Gothamites have picked up the habit of calling the bats and birds cauldron as an inside joke. Tim again rolled his eyes in sync as first snorted. Another word for a colony of bats is cauldron, so that's where it came from. Danny just felt even more confused. My family gets targeted a lot? Are they important or something? Just how often do they get kidnapped that the bats and birds have to follow them during family outings? Not to mention that Gothamites just give out nicknames to their vigilantes. Total weirdos. Glancing at the two, Danny decided to ask another question. So, why does your family get targeted a lot? Does this have to do with your last name sounding familiar? I just don't really understand why you guys need to have a bat-shaped stalker every time you hang out as a family. Tim instantly looked like he died inside, as first made a sound as if he's a car starting up in cold weather. Just as Tim opened his mouth to speak, the sound of running came from the hallway. He and Tim looked at the entrance, and first was too busy dying to look. Duke slid into full view of the living room as he frantically grabbed onto the doorframe to stop himself from falling. No one moved as Duke shuffled into the room while catching his breath and plopping down on top of the coffee table, even though there was a perfectly good chair on the opposite side of Tim. Duke kept his eyes on Danny, then heavily sighed. I just got off the phone with Bruce, and oh man, is he not happy. I fucking swear, I spent like 10 minutes just telling him that we really did take a random kid off the streets. Then he kept asking stupid as hell questions like, why didn't you tell me that wasn't him or John, and shit like that. His friend's face scrunched up as he looked down at his feet and deflated with a sigh. Sorry, Danny, we really should have known better. Feeling kind of guilty about stressing out his friend, he reached over to pat Duke on the knee. You're good. Duke looked at him, so Danny smiled. Honestly, this is the best kidnapping that I've had so far. Not to mention that I got to meet so many nice people. Which was apparently the wrong thing to say, as all three looked back at Danny in horror. Backpedal, backpedal, backpedal! Throwing his hands up in the air, Danny tried to clear any misconceptions. But no, like really, I actually don't really consider this a kidnapping. I was just joking. You guys haven't even hurt me or anything, so I really don't mind at all. Oh, that probably made things actually worse. Shrinking in on himself, Danny gave out a nervous laugh as the others looked like a mix even more horrified and murderous. Duke leaned forwards and spoke with a forced calm. Has any of those kidnappings been reported by anyone? He shook his head, then Duke's eyes flicked towards Tim, who also shook his head for some reason. Then Duke quickly looked back at Danny. Would you like to? Dick here used to work as a cop. He can help you file out the paperwork needed to report them. He blinked in confusion. Wait, cop? Danny turned to look at first, who went on the edge at the sudden attention. Danny squinted at first, who began squirming in his seat, and appraised him. Huh, I forgot the cops existed. Tim made a strangled sound as Duke face-palmed and first blue-screened. I heard that there's a lot of bad cops out there. Were you one of the good ones? You passed my vibe check, but you can never know with my luck. Danny said with a shrug, while first looked like he was sucking on a lemon. Yes, I was one of the good ones. I used to partner up with Nightwing when I worked as a cop. The only reason why I signed up on the force was because I believed that I could get rid of the corruption. First tossed a hand through the air dismissively. Obviously, it didn't turn out so well since I'm no longer on the force, but first gave a sharp grin. I went through a lot of those bastards, though, and I was able to get enough info on the rest of the corrupt cops that Nightwing is still cleaning the house. Danny couldn't help but appreciate the effort, even though the idea of giving out information to a third party rankled at him. Nodding at the man, Danny leaned back and fully relaxed into the couch. Altogether, the events of today seemed to crash into him. Humming to himself, Danny laid his head on the back of the couch and looked up at the ceiling while tapping his fingers against his leg and thought, would it be worth it? Mom and Dad won't like it, and Vlad has some really good lawyers. Not to mention that there's no evidence of the times he kidnapped me. Well, there is, but that'd give away my half status, so not worth it. Danny rolled his head to look over at first. No, thanks. It won't be worth it to file the kidnappings. There's no evidence that that they happened at all, and not to mention that the Fruit Loop has some really good lawyers. If there's anything that Nightwing and Road Robin can find and use against him, that's all right with me. Rubbing at his eyes, Danny mumbled out can we continue this conversation later? It's like 1 a.m. and I am super tired, and I was promised a movie night. A huff and laughter circled around him, followed by the sound of movement. A hand laid on his shoulder, and first spoke quietly to him. Do you have any movie preferences? Danny shook his head with a laugh out of first. All right, we'll set up the movie and get the snacks. First let go of his shoulder and started talking with a spot-on British impression. Since you are our esteemed guest, please feel free to rest as your host prepares the entertainment for the night. Peeking open an eye, he snorted at the pose that first was in. The man had an arm held behind his back at a right angle, as his other hand was tightening an invisible neck handkerchief, while sniffing imperiously. Closing his eyes once again, Danny felt a hand ruffle his hair that he weakly batted at. Danny sagged against the couch and dozed off. All 4 of them were packed on or in front of the couch and watched the movie in front of them. Danny was sitting in between Duke, who slung an arm over the back of the couch and sitting on his left. Tim is curled up on the right and frowning down at his phone as he rapidly typed on it. First decided to lay in front of the couch and practically trapped Duke and Danny's legs by leaning against them. Eyeing the man who was fully concentrated on the movie, Danny felt guilty about still not knowing his name. I really should ask him if he wants me to call him Dick or First. On one hand, I don't want to be rude and give him an unwanted nickname. On the other, he really seems to actually like being called First, which is pretty weird, but I don't think I have any room to judge him on that. First must have eyes on the back of his head or something, because he turned around and smiled gently at Danny, and didn't go back to watching the movie until he gave the man a thumbs up. Turning red-faced at getting caught, he decided to try and watch the movie. Shrinking in on himself, Danny couldn't help but feel embarrassed when remembering the conversation about where he would be staying for the night. I can't believe that First actually prepped a room for me to sleep in while we were looking for Mothman. He fidgeted with his hands to try and dispel some of his nerves. Shaking away the thoughts, he forced himself to focus on only the movie. He didn't catch the name, but it had something to do with a kid that took care of pigs, who lost a prophetic pig to a king who wants a cauldron or something. It's definitely dated, but First seemed to adore this movie, and Danny felt that the stress he caused the man was more than enough to sit and watch the movie with him. That didn't stop him and Duke making fun of the characters, much to First's dismay when he caught them doing it. Tim, meanwhile, was still glued to his phone and only looked up occasionally when the movie hit a cinematic climax, or a scene caught his eye. The movie had reached a lull after the main character had escaped the king's castle, when First spoke in between shoving handfuls of popcorn in his mouth. "So, Danny." The man turned his head slightly to stare at him. "Who's this Fruit Loop person exactly? Like, what's his personality and such?" First shifted so that he was facing the trio instead of the TV and propped his head up with his hand. "Gotta know who the billionaire is to watch out for. My not actually a brother, you know?" He topped it off with a lazy grin. Danny stared down at First, then shrugged. "I don't think that First would actually fight Vlad. What harm could there be in telling him about the Fruit Loop?" "Vlad?" Danny scrunched up his face at the unwelcome reminder of the Fruit Loop. "The only way I can really explain him is that he's haughty-taughty." Yeah, that word really does fit him now that I think about it. Even the Mansons are more tolerable than Fruit Loop is. Danny nodded to himself. Hooty-twatty. Blinking back into the present, he focused on Duke, who was looking like he was judging Danny's sanity. Dick breathed out harshly from his nose, but kept a straight face, even when Duke blindly reached in front of Danny and smacked First on the shoulder, who pouted at Duke and curled around the popcorn bowl. "They're definitely brothers, man. I really don't know how I missed that the first time around. Maybe my friends are right to make fun of me for being so oblivious. Well, it would be funny to let Duke try and figure out the pronunciation by himself. Danny didn't want to leave his new friend hanging. "No, hoity-toity." "What are you saying? Are you even speaking English?" Tim looked at Danny with thinly veiled curiosity, peeking through his nonchalant expression. It took a lot of Danny's will to not laugh at how Tim reminded him of a prairie dog when he sat up from his slouched position like that. "Oh, it's slang. The best way to describe it would be like stuck-up, snobbish, selfish, and on your high horse. Throwing your weight around for no reason. I wasn't told the exact meaning, but that's the context that it's used for. It's really not a good thing to be called hoity-toity, especially in the more rural areas. It's like a social death sentence." At that, First and Tim nodded, like they understood just how bad it was to be called hoity-toity, despite not learning what it means. Duke looked between the three of them, while fully embracing the look of, "I am surrounded by crazy people." Wanting to move on from Vlad and wanting to enjoy the movie, Danny pointed to the popcorn bowl that was next to Dick's head. "Can you pass that over, please?" The man beamed at Danny and handed over the bowl after grabbing a handful of popcorn. Then he struggled to eat sideways. "Thanks. Though, can we finish the movie, please? It's a vibe that I didn't know existed, and now I'm completely invested in it." Both Duke and First laughed, and Tim shook his head in exasperation. All four of them settled down once again in companionable silence, and didn't leave the couch until the movie ended. Duke yawned as he stretched in a way that roughly shoved First's leg. When the man leaned up to swat at his brother's feet that were still in the air, Tim jumped up from his spot, then went to the TV and rewinded the VHS tape. Danny decided to free his own leg and conveniently do his own stretch that made him lay on top of Duke. His friend squawked as Danny almost hit him in the face with a stray hand and tried to push him off. First laughed as he stood up to flop on top of them both. Duke wheezed as he tried to crawl out, but Danny flipped around and wrapped his friend in his arms. "If I'm stuck under him, then you're stuck with me." A coup from first was their only warning as they got enveloped in what could only be described as a hug from a bear or octopus. Ancients, this guy really does have the best hugs. These are amazing. In response to getting hugged so dearly, Danny smiled as he relaxed and basked in the warmth of the pile he's in the middle of. This is officially one of the best days of my life. A few beats later, a clatter from the coffee table froze them in place. They looked over to see Tim standing with his hands on his hips and looked down at them with the most driest expression Danny ever saw. As nice as it is to see you all doing some brotherly bonding, it's past 3 a.m. and the popcorn got spilled. Some people in this room, Tim glared at first, aren't used to staying up this late. The man nervously laughed and let go of them to sit up properly. Danny didn't move to get up, but he stopped holding on to Duke. First whistled at the popcorn that's strewn all over the floor. Wow, we really should have done this in the movie room so the popcorn would have felt like home. It looked like a murder scene in here. He couldn't help the baffled look he gave first as Duke shoved Danny off. Do they actually just have a movie theater in their house? Maybe I shouldn't be so surprised at that since Sam has one as well. Just rich people things, I guess. Clearing his throat, Duke took in the popcorn carnage as well. Yeah, Tim and I can clean up here while Dick takes you up to your room. Tim made an affronted scoff, but Duke kept talking, since he, is the only one that knows where the room is. Tim scowled at Duke and opened his mouth, but Duke cut him off again. Oh, come on, man. How dense are you? I'm trying to have a private chit-chat with you. Obviously, Dick's gonna join us to help clean up the mess he made. At that, Tim's face became thoughtful. Then he motioned at first at Danny, then at the door. Might as well. Though, Dick... Tim whipped his head to glare at the man who tried creeping out of the room on his tippy toes. His friend's eyes narrowed into slits as he spat out the words as if they were on fire. You better come back down to help if you know what's best for you. With a grin, the two-fingered salute, first bounded back over to the couch and picked up Danny, then walked out of the room laughing. He couldn't help but be confused at how easily this guy just scooped him up and started walking. How strong is he? Like, seriously, what the fuck? Are they feeding him and Basking Shark George the same shit or something? Danny looked up at first, completely disgruntled, which must have looked funny to him or something because he started laughing again. Thankfully, though, first set Danny down so that he could close the door, which cut off the sound of Duke and Tim picking up another fight about eating floor popcorn. With a fond smile and shaking off his head, first waved at Danny to follow him. They walked down the halls and up a flight of stairs in companionable silence. A thought struck Danny. Wait, isn't this the same hallway that those two ran into when we came back from WE? Wow, I really should have picked up on that the first time around. Guess Sam and Tucker are right about me being clueless. Eventually, they stopped in front of an unassuming door that first opened up for him. They stood in silence for a moment before First spoke up. Well, breakfast is at about 8, but I'll stop by around 7:50 to show you where the dining room is at. Stifling a yawn, Danny nodded. Yeah, that sounds good to me. If anything, I should be awake around 7. Night First. The man laughed breathily as he ruffled Danny's hair, much to his chagrin. Seriously, what's up with this family and messing with my hair? First smiled brightly and true at him, then gave him a quick one-armed hug, then walked down the corridor. Calling over his shoulder with a wave, First yelled out, "Good night, Danny. See you in a few hours." Danny stared at his back with a frown while fixing his hair. Might as well take a shower. Who knows what was in that river? Turning around, he entered the room and got ready for bed. After Danny got back to the hotel, Mr. Lancer lifted the restrictions on the rest of his class, but had him and his friends spend the rest of the day in the hotel. They just shared a look of bemusement, and his friends promised to share with him a funny video. After they had already chewed him out for getting in the car with strangers and couldn't even be bothered to keep his phone charged. When they made up with each other, all of them sat huddled together on the hotel bed as they laughed at a video. Pressing play again, they watched the moment that Mr. Lancer realized that Danny was missing. He let out a giggle, and Sam punched him in the shoulder to be quiet. "Oh dear. Oh, gone with the wind, we've lost Danny," Mr. Lancer muttered under his breath as he nervously glanced around his class. "Class, as you can see, Danny is not with the group anymore. Does everyone remember the Flyaway Fenton Protocol?" Their classmates nodded. "Good." The guide's head snapped to look at Mr. Lancer. "There's a kid missing? This is terrible. Hopefully he's still in the building. Gotham is dangerous for the unprepared. I'll go ahead and ask the front desk to try and have the security search for the building." Mr. Lancer stared blankly at the guide's back as he beelined out of the hotel lobby. The video panned back towards Mr. Lancer, who just looked defeated. "I fear more for Gotham. The people here are the ones unprepared for lone Fenton." An unhinged laugh was heard before the video was cut off, but it was followed by the cackles of the three teens quickly replaying the video. End notes. Alfred wanted to mess with his grandkid by cussing and talking about World War II rations to keep him awake. They were called a shit on a shingle for a reason. It really did taste like shit on a hard, dry ass cracker. Duke, who is heavily concussed. "Shit on a cracker, you're the best, Alfie." Also, Alfred, "They'll never fucking believe you, Master Duke." Duke later, "Alfred was cussing, you guys gotta believe me." The rest of the Bat fam, "Sure, Duke. Let's lower your dosage next time." Tim, double trust fund baby, renowned vigilante, CEO of a global company, raised as a Drake and Wayne. "This is how things are going to work, Danny. Here are your options that I am willing to make compromises on, within reason." Danny, who watched the grandfather with his friends the night before, "He's mafia. He's mafia, and he's bullying people who are kidnapped." Dick, who does weekly laughing competitions with Bud and Lou, just a bunch of laughing emojis, just a shit ton of them. Tim, "Can people just please stop interrupting me? I want to have one conversation about Danny's safety, and you Koreans keep steamrolling into them." Duke and Dick, how about no? I actually do use shit on a cracker as well as shit on a bitch, and I honestly believe that Duke deserves to be free from his normal Bat-Kid reputation that he's been shoveled into, so he gets my cursing habits as a little treat. There is so many more weird phrases that I use, and they will be showing up in the following fics. Also, the Tumblr post that started all of this, and the poll. And that was part 7, chapter 7, the final part of It's a Reflex, a DPXDC podfic written by Coffee Loving Hermit and read by Summer Audio. This one was so fun to record. It's finally done. Oh my gosh. I made you guys wait like so long just like I totally could have finished this last chapter and then gone on break, but no. I was like, "Nah, fuck you guys. You guys can wait. You guys can wait for the final chapter." But really, this one was really fun, and I'm so sad that it's over, but it was such a good ending, and we still have a bunch of one-shots. I am planning on asking if I can do the one-shots, but I have not had time to read them yet, so I will read them before I, ask if I can do them, because why would I, I don't know, I feel like I would struggle a lot if I didn't read them before, because undiagnosed dyslexia, at least I'm pretty sure, because all of the symptoms point to it, but that's pretty much it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have anything else to say. I had a lot of fun with this. Super fun. It was so fun. I had so much fun podficking this, and I can't believe that it's over. But now we can start on a new fic, and you guys are going to love this fic. You guys are gonna love it so much. Well, you're gonna love either one that I choose to do, because I have two that I got approval for, and I don't know which one I want to start first. Because there's one in Voltron, and there's one that's DPXDC, and I don't know which one I want to start first, because they're both so amazing. And they're about the same length, I think. I'd have to double check it. But, they're both really good. I love them so much. I hold them so close to my heart. They're just amazing. They're my babies. But yeah, that's, oh yeah, on a different note, I got a haircut. I did have originally I did have a jellyfish cut, but and then I have two little strands that are long on the front face of my hair, on the sides of my bangs. I have those, and and I cut off the long parts in the back, so it's basically it's hard to describe, but it's really cute. What was her name? I can't remember, but I'll figure out how to describe it. I'll probably describe it in the next video and actually know how to describe it then. But yeah, I got a haircut. It's short now. I love it. It's so much less it was so overstimulating. I always had it up. It was so dead. It was so damaged. I can't even. Can you add that? That's what my mom always says. But yeah, so this was really fun, but this is starting to get really long, and I still have to save some stuff for the description, because I also rant in there, if you guys want to check that out. All of my videos have a little rant in the description, except for that one video where I was really rushing to get it out, so I had nothing. It was so chaotic and rushed. But yeah, so that is everything. So again, I hope you all enjoyed and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye. Alright, here are some bloopers that I have. Beginning notes. Thank you so much for reading this. All of your... They're way too fucking loud. I can't do this right now. Dick! Fuck. Damn it. For so long, I feared Oh, wait. No. Has any of those connected? He can help you file out the paperwork needed to report them. He blinked in confusion. Oh, wait. No, that's Duke.